So you guys weren't going to tell me that there was a cult on TikTok? Okay, not necessarily on TikTok, but Dancing for the Devil. I just watched episode 1 on Netflix, and I'm still dumbfounded that these cults are just dark holes within our society.
Here we go now.
So if you've been under a rock, you don't know anything about Shekinah, the church Shekinah, or the 7M management that was created by this pastor that ultimately looks like it is a cult that's still out there, separated these two sisters. It's so insane to me. I don't really understand the psychology of how these cults happen. But what I have noticed, because I've watched multiple documentaries on cults, the last one being The Vow, there is a very similar pattern that these cult leaders do. And that main pattern is separating people from their friends and their family. And literally, you can watch some of these people that are still within this cult on your social media dancing. And you may have stumbled upon their videos before, not realizing, I don't think they realize, that they're in a cult. Let me tell you, watching the Wilkins story, the parents, it seems as if they come from this perfect family. Look, no one's perfect, but it seems like they came from a family full of love. To have their daughter be so disconnected from them, as if she is gone. And literally, they have this term within the cult, die to a person, meaning that you're literally dead to your family and your friends. It is insane. And they have audio recordings of this man, Robert, the pastor. And it looks like his children are sort of like his soldiers helping recruit these kids. I'm only on episode 1, and honestly, I need a moment before I watch episode 2. But literally, this man has been around for decades doing this. However, with the growth of TikTok, and now he has this brilliant idea about utilizing these kids that love to dance, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to be a manager, and these are the types of songs that you should be doing. Well, some of these folks have broken away from Robert, and they're telling their story in this documentary. You know, I was not going to leave you hanging. We have to talk about part 2 and part 3 of Dancing for the Devil, a TikTok dance club documentary that's on Netflix. And if you missed part 1 of my recap, go check that out first. Give it a like, give it a comment. The only rabbit hole that I went down after watching this documentary, I had a disturbing dream after watching this documentary, part 1. But part 2, the significance of part 1 connecting two sisters that got wrapped up in this documentary, but only one really got wrapped up, Miranda. And then them giving the history behind Robert Shin and his church way before he started getting involved in TikTok dancers and bringing them into his church. And him doing this 30 years ago with these other two Korean sisters. Well, speaking of those two sisters that were a part of this cult 30 years ago, before this era, this chapter of TikTok dancers in the cult. Well, apparently one of the sisters got involved because, they didn't have the family structure. Their mom was an alcoholic. Their father wasn't around. Joined this church at the time, and then pulled her sister in, only for her to leave after Robert Shin allegedly made sexual advances at her. Mind you, back then, the church had a large exodus of members because a lot of the women accused Robert of being inappropriate and SAing them. So her sister said, I'm getting up out of here. So she eventually leaves the church, but this is after being in the church for years. She calls her sister, I'm leaving the church, come with me. She's like, I'm not going with you. Her sister ends up staying in the cult for 10 more years. Priscilla was in this cult for 23 years of her life. Look, the psychology of a cult, when we talk about Scientology and what they have done and where's Leah Remini? Leah Remini, are you going to do an episode or something on this? You need to, because it is classic cult behavior that this man is participating in, allegedly. Not only do they accuse him of just inappropriate SAing, massage me, and then it leads to something else, he also is taking all of their money. But the thing is with cults, it's so hard because all these people involved are adults. So it's hard to prove anything. And the only way you can get these cult leaders is on them breaking actual laws, like R-ing someone or SAing someone or money laundering, fraud, things like that. But the way that he takes their money, he's charging, like the current people that in this cult, he's charging them all kinds of, you're gifting money to Shekinah. He's manipulating and brainwashing them to believe, like, this is what you do for God. You will go to heaven. You will go to hell if you don't do this. You will go to hell if you do not dead yourself to your family members and friends. He's alienating these people from their family and friends. And he's been doing this for decades, before this whole TikTok chapter of his cult. So not only former members from the years ago part of this cult speak in this documentary, also some of the dancers that joined this cult back in 2020 are speaking out in this documentary. And you see the financial abuse that Robert Shin is accused of. They're bringing in specifically these dancers that are still on TikTok, that are still within this cult. You see, and they only collaborate with each other. So, and the scary part of this is that these dancers have millions of followers. And I just feel like they're probably bringing in and recruiting more people to be a part of this man's church. Well, in the Dancing for the Devil documentary, they show the financial abuse. So you bring in $100,000 and they deposit that money into your account, and then they charge you for rent. They're like, well, you're going to be gifting this particular amount to Shekinah for this. They end up paying this man 50, 60% of what they actually made. But they're probably being taxed on what they were actually paid by whatever sponsor. Spoiler alert, just want to let you know, by the end of this documentary, shout out to the families that were involved in this. It's so disheartening because I know they feel so helpless. They have filed complaints with the FBI, the IRS, the Attorney General, and nothing has happened to this man. They even have reported to the police the abuse that he's been accused of, and nothing has happened to this man. We even see them sue this man. Priscilla, who is so brave in sharing her story, she was in this cult for 23 years, talks about how she felt after she finally left. She talks about that moment when she finally left and why she left. She's suing him, and before she sued him, he tried to sue her for defamation. Well, we see her serve him. Well, she gets a group of her friends to serve him at a Korean restaurant. But like I said, the way that this documentary ends, because really the story isn't over, because there are still TikTok dancers, still people part of this cult that are still there and probably recruiting more people for this man to only collect. He's probably collecting millions of dollars. These TikTok dancers have millions of followers and sponsorships and things like that, and they've been brainwashed. If y'all see this, look, if they're on social media, I know they're probably afraid to leave. They're probably afraid to open up about what they experienced. Shout out to the folks that were in this documentary for being brave enough, because I think people, when they join a cult, they feel like, oh my God, how could I be so stupid? No, you're brave for telling your story. These people have been honing their craft for decades. Literally, Robert Shin has been honing this craft of manipulation and brainwashing for decades. Have you seen the Dancing for the Devil documentary? Well, I implore you to sage before and after.
Here we go now.